Moin, and welcome back to a new episode of Design Gossip. Today we will talk about the relic mechanic in Nightreign. Okay, to quickly summarize what all of this is about, then we talk about the design purpose of the entire thing, and then we will talk about a few potential changes and try to encompass different purposes or like similar purposes while not destroying the original ones. Obviously, there is strong consideration from some software what these mechanics should do. So this will be just an alternate version, and we don't actually know what From Software was intending to do with them, so this will be just my guesses. Okay, quickly summarize what this is. The player can customize all of the playable characters with these relics, which are just like up to 6 individual stat boosting items or items that give you new abilities or changes to existing abilities. And this allows you to, for once, like make your character stronger, but also to make your character more unique. So it's a form of customization in terms of power level. So it's their main progression and their main customization mechanic for each of these characters. The player can obtain these relics by simply going on any of the mission, and then they get some of them as their final rewards. There are 2 shops, one of them is right around the corner here, that allow you to invest currency to gamble for relics. And they also have a few pre-built relics that you can just obtain, and then there is just, hey, here, obtain random relics, and you can put currency in there to get new random relics. And sometimes these relics are what you want to get, and sometimes they're simply not. Most of the times they're not. Okay. There are also a number of boss relics, so each boss that you can fight here has a unique relic associated with them, and there is a Depth of Night, so a stronger, Depth of Night later, an Everdark version, which is just a stronger version of the same boss. And this boss will have a special relic as well. So you can get up to 8, one for each of the bosses, and then there are 7 of these Everdark boss versions. So you can get a total of 15 of these relics. These relics tend to be a little bit more unique than other relics. They have things like in here that if you do this gesture, you get madness buildup, but also if you are madness affected, you continuously recover FP afterwards. And let's just find another one. This one allows you to get a special weapon buff every time you switch your weapons, and generally boosts your stats for switching weapons. So it encourages you to play with multiple weapons at a time, or quickly switch back and forth between the same weapon to get a benefit. For this one will have multiple benefits that directly synergize with critical hits. So they have a theme around them. Some of them are more concrete, some of them are more loose, but they are built for a specific purpose in most cases. And because you can guarantee getting these relics and get instead of all of the others, well, like there are also a few that are tied to a storyline, but most of the others you just get a random assortment of skills, while these ones will be scripted. So these ones are actually things that you could consider active progression elements, while the other ones are just additional rewards as long as you keep playing until you get the things that you want. So in addition to that, each character also has like special relics. So in this case we have this bottom section here which just says like Duchess in this case, so it showcases, well, like a relic that only works for this specific character. And in this version, it gives us a stacking damage benefit for each enemy that we delete during our ultimate time. And there is another one which gives you a brief vulnerability window whenever you use ability. So these will be specific to each of the characters. Usually these are quite fun, or at least extend the character in a specific way. So there are many situations in which you kind of want to get these. They are also very different in power level. Some of these are more useful and some of them are less useful, but they kind of they extend on what your character can already do. Yes. So, and in addition to this, we have the chalice system. So as you can see right now, all of these relics have different color codes, and there is a color coded ring underneath them. So you can select different layouts for what types of relics you can equip. These are also unlocked over time or purchased from specific merchants. And then this allows you to slot in different combinations of relics. That being said, because there is not really association with, like, for example, we have the blue relic. This is not really associated with any other thing than just being blue relic. So there could be anything in the blue relic, and it could be the same thing in there as yellow relics. So it's not really creating different build versions based on what relics you have. It's more like a restriction on the randomness on the system. So if you have 3 good red relics, then you can plug them into nothing. So you have to choose one of them that works with 2, and then you have to find, in this case, a green relic that also matches that. So it's basically just limits the options of the random inputs of things that you have obtained before. So, and then to sum this up, there are also these Depth of Night relics, Depth of Night, yeah, thank God. Depth of Night relics. These are for an endgame difficulty mode. So after you have beaten all of the bosses, you can enter a higher difficulty state, and in this state you can equip 3 additional relics, which would usually be disabled. And these come with more interesting and higher power level abilities, but they also come with downsides. In this case, we have this like ultimate charge impaired, which is an additional random roll on each of your relic rolls, which determines if the relic has a downside or not, and then which downside it is. So effectively, these relics come with 6 abilities, and like, well, 3 to 6 abilities, and some, like 3 of them can be negative. Okay, let's talk a bit about the design purpose for these. So the fundamental purpose for all of these progression mechanics that you have in roguelike or similar titles are to give the player some form of extension for their game duration. So something that you want to do to further play the game after you've completed everything. So, well, essentially just something that allows you to find more stuff for the stuff that you already have. So we've beaten all of the bosses, but now we want to make sure that our character has the perfect build, and now we have to play multiple rounds to accomplish that, because we have to find all of the different relics that we want and all of the different abilities that we have. Also, because we have the ability to combine these different relics, and they come with new abilities like the invulnerability on the ability that I've just shown. This just sets up a situation where the player gets into a state where they want to play around with new abilities so they can unlock new abilities. So basically it just extends the game time. And in doing so, we just set up a situation where players can play for longer. This is specifically relevant for a game like Nightreign, which has a strong multiplayer focus. And while if players would play through all of the bosses, have defeated everything, and then have nothing left to do, they would leave the game quite quickly. And if you would do that, then you generate a situation where players will simply not find matches anymore. So you have to find something that extends the game time. My interpretation of the entire thing is that this is the main focus that From Software was going for with the entire system, and they kind of disregarded any other purpose that they can put in with that. Obviously, other purposes of this will emerge naturally. We will talk about 2 of them in a second. But I do think that this was the main thing that they wanted to do, and they did double down and did remove a few things that could have been fun otherwise. But for the purpose of ensuring that players stick in the game for a while, they put more focus on the grind elements. Just to quickly showcase one of the abilities that you can get with this. So as Wilder, you can get the abilities to... find my controls again. Yeah. So as Rider, you can get the ability to get this fire swing, and then this will also buff your weapon afterwards. So you have the ability to get a fire buff and additional attack for your weapon. And similar you can, so like, this is like one of the character specific things, so all of the characters have something like that. And in addition to that, we can equip the thing that I was talking about before, which, oh, let me change the attribute slider, the filters. So we can instead just slot in the thing for the final boss, which gives you the ability to add a weapon buff on your weapon whenever you switch the weapon. So now if I put it away and pull it back out, it's now buffed with lightning. And if I do it the same, then, well, I got lightning again. Now I got fire. And if you have multiple weapons, this kind of encourages you to just play with whatever you have on your next slot, or you set up your character slots in a way that you always get back to the same weapon for doing that. Interestingly enough, this one also allows you to get at least the damage buff for swapping to your offhand, so there are different build options that you can create with that. There are a few cool bow builds that use that, so you swap between different bows to get the benefits of different buffs on your different hands. Okay. Yeah, so other purposes of the entire thing. So for most roguelikes, we have the situation that we want to power up our characters. And the reason for this is that for the standard game mode, which for this game would be beating at least the first 8 basic bosses, this is like the type of game you want all of your players to succeed in at some point. And then whatever comes after is post-game content, and this is something that people that want to put more time or want to get better in the game put their efforts in. So allowing players to power up is one of the main things that you will want to push for that, so these should be strictly power increases. I do think the Relic system succeeds in that, and From Software has put a few estimates, few additions in there to make this more usable. The main one being that starting the boss, you only can fight versus the first boss of the entire group before you can switch to different ones, and the first one is just quite a bit weaker than all of the others. And this is combined with the fact that you also get your first boss relic here, which is a bit weaker than the other boss relics. And then this, so you have this in the beginning, so you have a little bit lower power curve on a little lower enemy, but you can still get stronger relics naturally. And this in combination with you just being able to get new things for all of these bosses will gradually increase player power over time. That being said, I think that this would be an element that could definitely be improved upon. And that's just to get the usual standard you want to accomplish with this is you want players to power up during the base progression, and at the same time you want to have the progression of the game power up at the same or at a similar rate. And usually how we want to accomplish that is have progress be the determining factor of how difficult the game is. So ideally, first element that you do, in this case this boss, will be easier than the others that will open up afterwards, and then these will lead to something even stronger afterwards, which is exactly what it's doing. And to be fair, it's kind of what From Software is doing with all of their games. The other factor is the player power scale, and usually we want to decouple this from progress, even though progress sometimes has a relation to that. We want to focus on mainly invested time with that. And the reason why we do that is that people that struggle more will usually require more time to succeed at something. So people that struggle more have better power-ups at the same state of progress as someone that succeeds at the game at a more frequent pace. And this makes it so that the game will be more difficult for someone that's already good at it, and easier for someone that's currently struggling. Obviously, not directly, the person that's struggling has invested more time into this to get to the same state, but at the same state they will be more powerful. And this will keep the game interesting for people that want the challenge because they progress faster, and this by this rate they also get challenges matching their current success rate. And at the same time, we help people that have a harder time with all of that, and they will then progress at a slower rate, but at a similar margin in terms of difficulty spikes for them, because they now have better power-ups when they reach a later spot. We don't have to do this throughout the entire game, but usually we want this for the base content. As soon as we hit like this, hey, this is where the game is considered complete, we can have higher challenges that don't necessarily need to have additional power scaling on the player side. Interestingly enough, for the aspects of Elden Ring Nightreign, we do have additional power scaling for the endgame, which can't be brought back into the easier game modes. So these extra relics only apply in the like hard mode setting of the game. And I do think that this is kind of sad. I would prefer if the game would allow you to only obtain these things in hard mode, but if you have obtained them, you should be able to use them in general. This accomplishes two things. For once, this allows people to play around with different builds in whatever pace they want to do, but it also allows people to, let's say I would struggle with one of these bosses in particular, that this would allow me to have a way to get more powerful before I can get back to these bosses. This is not how the unlock logic works in this game, but in theory, this would allow players to do something else first, even though it's essentially more difficult, but it allows them to get power for something else that they want to do later. Elden Ring base game does this a lot. In fact, the entire game is built around having heavy challenges, but then encouraging the player to go into different locations to make up for the challenge that they had there. So players can kind of pick and choose their challenges, and then the things that are harder for them, they can come back later if they're more powerful, and things that are easy for them, or easier, it's still a From Software game, will come with the elements that, hey, here is where you can get your power, and then you can go to the other location. Also, obviously, in the game, you just get constant power for just defeating enemies. And this is the same in this game, even though it functions differently. Like, for any mission you complete or start, you get some form of relic rewards. It's completely random if this will be something useful or not for your purposes. That being said, over time, you will accumulate something that's probably better than whatever you have at this given moment. So over time, player power will increase. So fundamentally, this is here. Okay, and the last thing that we usually want to get with these systems is build and skill expression. Allow players to plan for certain situations or boost certain elements, and then take advantage of them. I think this system does this really well, but because of how random it is not necessarily guaranteed that players can get there. So it will build up over time and then allow you to build specific character combinations, but it does not necessarily allow you to like work towards them. So at some point of your playtime you will have a cool build together, but not necessarily whenever you want to have it. Okay, I think those are the three main concerns that you would have from a design perspective if you want to create a type of progression system for your roguelike title. So now we will talk about a few potential changes or things that I would make differently when I were to rework this system. A short disclaimer here, many of the changes that I want to focus on here is to make all of this a little bit more streamlined and more easier to engage with for the player. This will come as a compromise to how grindy it is. That being said, the current state of that has multiple random associator that makes it harder to make different random elements work together. This is the fact that you get relics with up to 3 random perks, and you usually want 3 perks because it's better to have more than less because they're all upsides. And so finding 3 of them in combination that you want is already like rare. So usually you find relics with 1 or 2 things that you want and something that's kind of useless to you. And this is already like a huge random peak for finding good relics. Then the fact that relics come in different power levels, so we have like relics that have 3 slots here, but if I go through them, we will find that there are relics that only have 2 things, and there are relics that only have 1 thing. And these are just like fundamentally weaker. Also, all of these different power effects. So we have here sleep improves attack power and attack power +1, but this also exists as +2 and sometimes +3 for some effects. So you already have a lot of randomness in terms of how much power you're getting out of each individual relic. This is now in combination to what things are on the same relic that you would like to have. This is even further differentiated with the chalice system. So the fact that you can only combine specific relics in specific color patterns makes it really hard to get to a location where, like, to a situation where, oh, I found these 3 relics and they're all good, but now they don't match together. In addition to this, because there are character-specific relics, sometimes you have a relic that is fundamentally good and it doesn't really function in the color pattern of things that you have available for the character, but it also doesn't function for any other character because it would only be good for this character. So I would argue about 90+% of all relics you find are kinda useless at like a certain point in the game. Like probably more than that. So I do think it's fine to reduce the grind a little bit. Also, in addition to this, is that the Depth of Night relic have these negatives, and these are also completely random in relation to the other skills on them. So there's even more randomness associated with that. That being said, I think that this is a good thing, because this is the fundamental end game of the game. Having something that it's like, this is the point where this entire system wants to get really grindy to encourage players to stick around. That being said, I do think the pre-version of this, or something that you just have for the normal playthrough time of the game, really doesn't need that much. Okay, so things I would change about this. First of all of these character-based skills that are for the base difficulty mode, I would just include these in the character progression. So each of these characters has a storyline that you progress through, and I would just give the characters the individual abilities as you progress through the storyline. Now, this will create the situation that some of these abilities, like for example the Recluse has one that deals damage to you when you use your ultimate for a power spike, players might not want that. I personally don't think that this is an issue, but like, if you would want to get rid of that, then there are ways to do that. Let's quickly showcase the ability first before we go deeper into that. Nope. Where is it? Oh my god, filters. There. Also, the menu controls are something that, if you go to another game and then come back to this, are quite, well, let's say you have to get used to them. Yeah, here, suffer blood loss, and then this boosts your ultimate, so just flip one of these in there. And I'm actually not sure if I can show this in the hub, but the idea is that if you use that, if you use that, then you will like take damage and you get a damage buff. It's also coded as blood loss, which means you can combine this with other effects, so there are other upsides to that. But essentially speaking, you might not want this. I would just ignore that personally and say, hey, this is just how the character works. That being said, there are items in this game like this brooch here, which exists in 2 different versions, and you can switch between them at one of the merchants. And I think you could just have something like this to toggle something on and off. And it doesn't need to be part of the actual relic system. So this would just allow for a continuous player progression, like some form of power level increase for the base few, let's say for the first 5 to 10 hours you play with a character. And this would, in my opinion, just work really well to have this power increase that we want for players to just go through the first few bosses, so they can ramp up, and then the game difficulty at some point kind of matches their own power level. The other thing reason why I would do this is most of these abilities are really kind of cool, and it feels odd to remove them from the player just because they don't match in their current power scaling for relic builds they want to do. I think this is way cooler if the player could just play with them. Okay, then the other thing that I would look into is the chalice system. So I think this is an additional hurdle that from the grind perspective I wouldn't remove, but I think it's like an additional system that's just not really needed. And how I would change it would be to have these boss relics just the same thing as the relics, as the chalices. So instead of slotting all of your gems into these chalices, I would just say, hey, select the boss relic. This comes with a certain set of abilities that are quite specific, or at a given point of time already have like a specific niche in mind. And then this boss relic has these slots. So essentially the chalice itself has an ability, and you get them from defeating the different bosses. Now, this comes with the downside that you now no longer can combine different boss relics, but it comes with the upside that each boss that you defeat not only gives you a cool ability, it gives you an entire new loadout. And you can do a few more things with this. Like for once, this would also allow each Depth of Night boss to just give you another boss relic, which is the same thing that you had before, maybe power scaled, and with a different relic layout. So essentially you could just have, hey, you get extra rewards that are really easy to produce from the game development side for all power levels. And in addition to that, this comes with the benefit that we could now have a small icon next to our name that showcases the relic that we have equipped. And this gives other players an immediate hint for, hey, this is one of the unique build setups that the player has. So if you have the relic in for just way more health, then hey, this character might be kind of tanky. Or if you have one in there so you can swap your weapons, that hey, this character wants to have multiple weapons of the same type, so they can swap between them. So it gives them like some hint of how you would want to play the game. And the other thing that this accomplishes is that now people could showcase for, hey, I've defeated this boss in highest difficulty, and you can see this with the icon next to my name. So it also has like some form of prestige status. Yes. I do think those would be the main aspects that I would change here. Like I do think we should try to maintain the grind for like the purposes mentioned before. It is a multiplayer game. It has a very like repetitive game cycle that is fun to engage in, but you want to keep people in this engagement. So some grind is necessary, but I would also push more for the initial player power level increase from these, and I would try to have the cool abilities just something that people get. And have these relics themselves focus more on a few stat abilities, while they can come with a few cool abilities, but it feels like something that you should not on default look for, or at least not like try to like slot in, especially if they reach a point of, hey, I could have this cool fire attack, but I could also deal 20% more damage with something, and this is usually better, so I don't take the cool fire attack. I would allow people to just take the cool fire attack. For the Depth of Night abilities, I would just leave it as is, simply because I think that it is really good to include grind here. That being said, I would also set it up in a way that players can use the Depth of Night abilities just in normal game mode. If people manage to complete a higher difficulty setup and then go back to an easier one, yes, the easier one will be easier for them, but this will be the case anyways, because you have people that previously managed to beat a higher difficulty setting. So why not allow them to play around in the easier difficulty modes? Okay. I think that's all I have to say. Obviously, all of this is quite open to interpretation. I don't know exactly what From Software is thinking about all of these things, but I would also be really interested in your opinions. What do you like about the system? What do you dislike? Have I mentioned something that you would agree with or disagree with? And let's just have a conversation about all of these things. With this, I hope you have an amazing week, and we see each other. Cheers!